In November, voters like you will have the opportunity to make choices that will affect the quality of life for you and everyone who lives in Georgia. How? By voting on 3 amendments to our state's Constitution. They are the Georgia Forest Land Protection Act, the Infrastructure Development Districts Act, and the Redevelopment Powers Act. The purpose of this video is to explain these 3 amendments and their enabling acts so that you can make an informed choice when you go to the polls. So, let's start by taking a look at the Georgia Forest Land Protection Act. Simply put, the purpose of the act is to preserve Georgia's forest lands from development. To keep Georgia from losing its forest lands, it will take the help of private landowners. Today, Georgia has 23.8 million acres of forest land, more than any other state, but only 7% is owned by the public. Individuals own 72% of the total forest land in Georgia, and corporations own 21%. As more people continue to move to Georgia, owners of these forests will come under increased pressure to develop them. Often when development occurs, the value of the nearby forest land increases, and this places a greater tax burden on surrounding property owners. Before long, as taxes increase on forest land, the cost of growing timber may become more than it's worth. When that happens, growing timber will no longer be financially viable in many parts of the state. When wooded land is converted by development, our forests are lost forever. With this loss comes the loss of the forest's ecological benefits, such as the preservation of clean water, clean air, and wildlife habitat. Economic benefits and recreation opportunities are also lost. If ratified by the voters in November, the Georgia Forest Land Protection Act will help preserve the benefits that forests provide to all Georgians by encouraging forest land owners to keep their land forested. Here's how it will work. Owners of forest land would sign a contract promising not to develop their land for at least 15 years. In exchange, the forest land owners would receive a reduced property tax assessment during the life of the contract. While this also means that there will be a reduction in local property taxes, the law would require the state to replace most of it and ensure any impact on local services if minimized. Georgia's forest landowners are good stewards of the land and dedicated to conservation. But if only 10% of landowners sold their forests for alternative development, Georgia would lose more than 2.4 million acres of forest that might be replaced by new developments. This act will help keep the tax burden lower for private landowners that wish to keep their property forested. For property to qualify for the Georgia Forest Land Protection Act, the landowner must have at least 200 acres of contiguous property. The property entered into the program cannot be developed for 15 years, even if ownership is transferred during that time. The penalties for breaching the covenant can be as much as 3 times the amount of the tax savings received on all the property within a single covenant. The Georgia Forest Land Protection Act provides a more favorable tax climate which encourages owners to preserve their forest land while imposing severe financial penalties on landowners that fail to carry out their commitment to keeping their land forested. As a Georgia resident, you will have the opportunity in November to help reduce the risk of losing more forest land in our state if you choose to vote in favor of this act.